twisted. I'm not defending Donald Trump. If Donald Trump hadn't been using the Jesuit or Zionist order operation of the banks, their own system against themselves, many of you who had pensions would not be receiving any pension checks right now today. Now, that's the truth. Even though it's still colored. And if you notice that the stock market is going up, but jobs is going down, it also clearly shows you there's no correlation whatsoever. But when they talk to the people as if the stock market is a representation of the gross national product and of the economic operations on the land. The operations of the stock market constantly going up, drops a little bit and then goes back up, drops a little bit and then goes back up. Then gold and silver goes down, etc. And the people don't notice that there's no correlation, that the entire situation, the operations of their economic system is totally, absolutely manipulated. And that the stock market and the employment, etc., has no relationship whatsoever. Also notice that all of your major corporations, i.e. sort of like the Gates Foundation and other foundations, have exponentially generated billions of dollars in these last few months when the people and their accounts have gone the opposite direction, and the people don't recognize that there's a correlation in the fact that there's no correlation between the stock market and the economics of the people. A lot of things would you would answer yourself if you pay attention to things. Don't pay attention to what the politicians say. Pay attention to what's happening to you. And I'm also not saying that that's totally terrible, because in another way, it's sort of like they're still fighting over your estate. That's what you really need to know. And the other fact that governments don't have money. They steal yours. It's why it's important for them to put up that fake premise or convince the people that they're U.S. citizens, not knowing that that when they agree to that, you understand there's no naturalization. Ask yourself this. Present anyone that you know, and you can actually have them come on and make their comments on our venue at the House of Awakening Minds. Show when any of these people of African descent who keep claiming to be U.S. citizens, show their naturalization papers and show evidence of them going through the nationalization process, etc. And I guarantee you they won't, because it never happened. They were not, cannot, and will never be U.S. citizens, although they can claim it. But they use your claim to actually create more bonds. This is why you see them desperately running troops. They run around all over the place, banging on people's doors, asking them to sign the census.
So yesterday,
that's why they're doing it.
Yesterday, the deadline?
It doesn't matter. They're bankrupt. They're dissolved. They've been dissolved. Let's look. Let's look at this again. You know, you all need to really get some clarity on what's going on here. I'm going to read something else to you. You'll notice how New York City right now is boarded up, even areas where they didn't have so-called peaceful riots under Antifa, that is disguised as the Black Lives Matter movement. Number 11, quote unquote, New York City is defined in federal regulations as, quote unquote, the United Nations. New York City is, quote unquote, the capital of the world. See 20, Council on Foreign Relations, Chapter 111, Subpart B, 44.103, Subsection B, 2 and 2. There you go. You better wake up. Hold on. I'm going to give me another one. Give you another one. And for you who are arguing about Trump, and not that I'm defending Trump again, because these people keep twisting things around. Social Security numbers, I know a lot of y'all depend on that, particularly since you ain't got no jobs. You've been thrown off the plantation. Social Security numbers are issued by the United Nations through the International Monetary Fund. And the application for a Social Security number is the SS5 form. The Department of the Treasury / International Monetary Fund issued the Social Security Fund forms, SS5 forms, and not the Social Security Administration. The new SS5 forms do not state who publishes them, while the old forms state they are from the Department of the Treasury. See 20 Council on Foreign Relations, Chapter 111, Subpart B, 422.103, Subsection B. Thank you very much. Do some studying. I'll give you something else. Y'all really need to really start doing some civic studies. The United States does not have any employees because there is no longer a legitimate United States. There shall be no more reorganizations. After 200 years of bankruptcy, it is finally over and dissolved. See Executive Order 12803. Repeat, see Executive Order 12803. So now, again, the more you understand the real politics, the more you understand why they're fighting Trump for cleaning out the house of the corruption. Not necessarily because he's a good guy, because the world won't trade with them anymore. And don't think that you're going back to your JOBs if half this stuff is not solved by Trump. That's the truth.
Okay, I have just
Go ahead.
An epiphany. It may be way out.
Epiphanography. Go
it
ahead.
may be out the lunch.
Yeah.
Okay, but 9/11, when it actually happened, I saw the towers as a symbolic of 11, which is a master number. And you just said that the New York is the
capital of the world.
Of the world is also the United Nations of the capital of the world. The Twin Towers represent the 11 or the master number. The strike on the towers took place on September 9/11. It took 9 years.
Yes.
Later, it took. I mean, what I mean. It took till. I'm talking about that. It took till 2000, if you will, not 9 years, but it took till 2000, right, for that actually to fall. We thought the towers, when the towers went down, that was the collapse, but it didn't. It was teeter-tottering, if you will, precariously with all kinds of things. Like you said, 2007, 2008 came, and all the the various things, and they kept doing things to keep it propped up.
And keep this in mind.
In 2020, in our clear vision, now we see that it has now collapsed.
And people already know that it was an inside job. They didn't want to believe that. They really want to believe that somebody brought them down with a box cutter in a cave in Afghanistan, wherever. Hold on. The other deal of it is, people pretend not to recognize the documented record, that 2 months before that they doubled the insurance on all those buildings, including that other building with that 7th floor that fell down. Oh, the plane missed that, but it fell down anyway later. And then they accused bin Laden of hiding in an alley doing it. And then some pilots who were trained Muslims, they threw their IDs out the window and everything else burnt, but they didn't burn.
Yeah. The ID, yeah.
And then Bush's brother and cousin, somebody found it, whatever. Please. People know their...
Bush is reading a book to the children upside downwards.
Yeah.
Waiting for the call.
Not just that. Keep in mind, not only did they double the insurance a couple months just before the buildings, also, people don't want to keep pretending they don't know that ambassadors came from Germany asking for their gold. those same 2 months before, when they raised the so-called insurance on all those, doubled up, and they told them to take a walk. Then remember, after that, then they went and raided Libya and stole Gaddafi's gold to give some gold to Germany. So people keep on forgetting sequence of events.
That's called robbing Peter to pay Paul.
Exactly. And so with Gaddafi, remember, he was helping to put that satellite up to take Africa and the Asiatic states from under the thumb of the Rockefellers and the Gates Foundation, etc. And so they wouldn't be subject to Google and all the rest of the stuff. And that was another reason they took Gaddafi out.
We would have had a different platform.
You daggone right. And now they can censor any information. Mm-hmm. See, people don't put all those things together. Not because they can't. I think a lot of people don't want to. You know how, like you were talking earlier, a lot of people play dumb and say that they're not aware of certain things, but when you really analyze it, it's not that they don't want to accept the truth because they don't want to admit that they've been hypocrites or part of the problem. Another one, number 6. The FCC, the CIA, the FBI, NASA, and all the other alphabet soup agencies and gangs were never a lawful part of the United States government, even though, quote unquote, the United States government, through its trustees and representatives, held stock in these foreign agencies. See United States versus Strang, U.S. 491, Lewis versus U.S. 680, F. 2nd, 1239. And so these so-called trustees and representatives actually hold stock in the FCC, the CIA, the FBI, and NASA. Do you notice how the people never benefit from none of these organizations, and anything of importance they hide from the people? And yet these people keep on doing things to the people that cause injury to the people. But the people keep thinking that these alphabet soup organizations are part of, quote unquote, their government. This stuff is all documented, and the people I think want to be naive. They just don't want to believe that these people are really anti-constitutional, and that you're being governed over by people who are not your legitimate government and never were. Hard nut to swallow, hard truth for a lot of people to accept. However, it is the truth.
I'm trying to get this. Is that the United 254 U.S. 491? You just gave.
What we just read?
1921. Lee Strang 254.
This is versus Strang, U.S. 491, Lewis versus U.S. 680. Yes.
Okay, I just want to put.
Yes, and then you all can do please take notes and do research, so that as we're sharing information over these years, that a lot of truths and facts that we present over to you via the House of Reawakening Mind, so you can do some research and become aware of these things yourselves. It's not our information. It belongs to all of you. And keep in mind, you're responsible to this. And also, you'll understand why Noble Drawley told the Moors that if they failed to enforce the law, that we were going to suffer. And here we go. And I suggest that if many of the people who have been claiming to be sheiks and sheikesses under the leadership of Noble Drawley, if they had carried out the law as he declared, a lot of these problems that we're suffering from now would not be on our backs. And that's a fact. But you hear some of them being trolls against people who have been trying to tell you the truth for years. A lot of them are trolls because they don't want people to pay attention to the fact that many of them have been traitors. It's unfortunate, but it's self-evident.
Columbus Dunn says, should we be getting some gold or silver and getting rid of this fiat? You've been saying that for years.
See, this is the point. While you're under occupation, you've been forced to use the fiat, or they try, like Durali said, they're going to try to starve you out. And you, as you all know, pardon me, Dr. Naila has been suggesting to you all, while you're able to at least get some silver so that you can help survive the transitions that are absolutely being made. And it's not a matter of belief. This is a matter of fact. That is the money. And if you have gold, you're not going to trade the gold. You'll use that as an insurance. But the silver you will actually use in transactional trade, because that is the money.
What about the fact that it seems that they're moving towards maybe a digital?
Because they're still trying to maintain power.
Right, because they could subtract anytime they want.
What they're trying to do, let's look at every time they try to do something or what they say. Always measure it against the Constitution. Article 1, Section 10, the Constitution for the United States state that no state shall emit any bills of credit or coin anything but gold or silver coin for payment of debt. And you can read that out. Please read that out every time somebody tells you about anything, saying that anything else is the money. And I'm not saying don't do these things. I'm not saying one thing or another. I'm saying what the money is and what people keep telling you that it isn't.
I'll put it here.
Because remember, they've been doing the digital currency for 40, 50 years already. It's just that they introduced it to the public now so they could still maintain control over your resources. Because it's easier for them to blank out your computer and a card that you have with digits than it was even to take the physical fiat. So take all that in consideration. So I'm not telling you what to do or not to do. I'm telling you use your common sense. Because remember, in contract law, substance for substance. And the other rule relative to money, silver and gold, coins, Yakimthaler, pardon me, if you don't have it in your hand, you don't have it. Tell me how many digital coins, which is an oxymoron, can you put in a jar? How many can you put in your pocket? How many can you hold in your hand? How many can you hold in your hand? Show, look, Dr. Nayo, look how much digital coins I got.
Yeah, a whole bunch.
You know, they'll have a convenient blackout and then all your stuff in your computer and your cards go away. And don't think that's not what they plan, because that's exactly what they plan. However, I'm also not saying don't use it. I already know the game. But you need to start using your common sense. Rule in contract law. Substance for substance. And if anybody that knows any contract law that contradicts that, state it for the record. Not by your opinion, but by fact of law of contract. National or international. Ancient or modern. You know, look at this, Dr. Nail. You remember what we were talking about earlier? Right? A certain company, a certain organization or company, under the guise of misrepresenting you, actually stole $1,900 from your account. A company, we were talking earlier, stole
$88.83.
$88 and almost 2,000 notes.
Right.
Right. Now, I want to point this out to you. If even with fiat, if that physical fiat was in your pocketbook, would they have been able to do that? No. unless they physically came and robbed you.
Right.
And it's still fiat. However,
Right.
they were able to do it because it was what? Digital. If they can do 1988, even without you, you had to find it out.
Right.
And guess what? If you didn't go through hell and high water to complain, you would have been out of it.
Right.
What does that tell you? The capacity of the operations with a dishonorable governing body, which they already multiple times proven to be dishonorable. 1900 could also be 91.
Right.
And guess what? At the same time, while you file and other people file complaints, right? Everybody's does not answer, and everybody does not get remedy.
That's right.
Intelligence tells you. Now they're both forms of fiat. However, do you really recognize them being bankrupt while they're doing this census so hard, doing this? They're running hard on this census, and the people don't know that they're bankrupt and that all government offices and departments have been legally dissolved. Dissolved. What does legally dissolved mean?
It means it no longer is valid or it's no longer.
So on what basis of law are they taxing people? And this has been since 1933.
What's fraud?
Of course it is. So why do you think they want to get these people on digital transfers now?
It's easier for them to rob.
It's easier to rob you and to tax you that way than it was before. And before it was already a fraud.
And
now they are limitless.
What I heard they would even do in this instance is potentially have a limit on your a time limit for you to spend.
They can limit, so they're forcing you.
If you haven't spent in a second, like now we say
it disappears.
It disappears.
What does that tell you? No, they're telling you.
Yeah.
Now, hold on. So right now, whenever somebody tells the truth,
you also know every transaction that you now handle.
Exactly.
They know when you pay the boy to
cut
your grass.
Exactly.
Whatever happens is
not only that. If you tell any truths about the corruption, they push a button and all of your stuff disappears. The same way that the different CIA platforms, Twitter, Google, Facebook, etc., are demonetizing people who have already been thrown off their jobs, and they are working hard themselves, being creative, and with their intellectual operations are generating finance. What do? Push a button and demonetize them. Push a button and do what? Freeze their accounts. Isn't that called digital? Oh, how far do we need to go with this conversation? Substance for substance, y'all. Contract law. In contract law principles, there shall be no vaguity. That means legitimate contracts cannot be vague or misleading. 2, substance for substance. 3, a minor or minority, i.e., cannot make valid contract, etc. The parties in the contract must be of lawful and legal age and competent and mentally stable, etc. And that's just a few points. But mainly, substance. Is substance digital? Is substance abstract?
No.
Digital is abstract. That's a violation of contract law. At what point do people not recognize when they're being introduced to another fraud on top of a fraud because the first fraud failed them? It failed you. It benefited them. And now that the people caught on, they're presenting to you digital so they can steal the rest of your stuff and still maintain power over your lives. As a matter of fact, you'll be more locked down now than you were before. Substance for substance, you all. Everybody keeps trying to avoid treaty law and constitution, aren't they? Aren't they? So how are these people who are not constitutional going to make laws that is authorized under constitutional vested authority? Duh. They don't even recognize that these people are openly admitting that they're not only traitors, that they're criminal. It's not an issue of whether it works or not. It's an issue that is clear criminality. Substance for substance, y'all. Self-government is the major method by which you dismiss them and do not consent to them being fofers or trustees over your estate. That's a fact. So to govern yourself, you must know yourself. That's for one. To govern over yourself lawfully, you must recognize the treaties and laws that existed before you were born by virtue of your foreparents, etc., your forefathers. And you better specifically name them, and you better be harmonic with your pedigree and bloodline, because you can't use those treaties and constitutions if you're not a party to them. Why do you think Noble Drew Ali said to these Moors, if you don't do anything else, declare your nationality? When you analyze law of contracts and covenants on the planet, you'll recognize why he said it. But you also recognize those who were traitors against him don't teach civics. Even though it's an established fact that the Moorish Temple of Science was registered as a civic organization, and then you'll see people who claim to be authorities under the authority of Noble Drew Ali will keep telling you that he didn't teach civics, lying to your faces. Lying to your faces. And then you'll understand why many people aren't aware of this information we're sharing with you now when it should have been common knowledge. Common knowledge.
Roxy Day says, how is the Treaty of Peace and Friendship relevant in these times in the context of commerce?
Because it is commerce. The Treaty of Peace and Friendship is the longest running treaty operating on the land, etc. in modern times. That's a fact. So for someone to be operating in any venue or international, they're operating under rules of trade, international, and those trades and international commerce or international communications come under consular venues of treaties. That's a fact all over the world. That's the platform. That's the venue. Has there been a constitutional convention by which these treaties or constitution were dissolved? And if they were not, that's the law of the land. This is why Drew Ali said in the Divine Warning to the Nations, he said what? That Constitution 1774 has never changed. Why? Because there's never been a constitutional convention. They stand as a supreme law of the land. And even to change them, then you're going to have the descendants of those people, i.e., are the only ones who have the authority to dissolve it. They're in perpetuity until such time takes place. So now you got a lot of conscious Moors, and we're not going along with the BS, are we? A lot of people are upset now, aren't they? Why? Because we discovered that they have been operating in a state of misprision. See, as long as they had you under the Christian black codes, going around calling yourself crayons, you know, I know some light-skinned green people, and then some dark-skinned, orange-skinned black people, but then the white, purple people don't matter what color you are, and then we have rights under the Constitution. You're not a party to it. Stop. Get over it. Stop playing. It's not in your interest to continue BSing.
There's a question or a comment.
And I'll share another one with you.
Okay.
Number 8. There are no lawful judicial courts operating under the jurisdiction of the United States Corporation doing business at North America. Lawful courts have not been in existence since 1789. Article 3 judges do not enforce statutes and codes. Executive administrators enforce statutes and codes. See FRC versus GE 281 US 464, Keller versus PE 261 US 428, 1 Statute 138-178 as a point of reference, and you'll find other cases in relationship, because that one case will lead you to another, and you'll recognize that there are no Article 3 judges. Now do you see why conscious Moors are enforcing the treaties via Article 3, Section 2 of the Constitution for the United States, which leads back to the treaties, diversity of nationality? Consular court is the venue. And just because they are fraud don't mean that we are. We're standing on the law while they're standing on fraud and under a color of law. That's why you see a lot of people all upset as soon as Moors say anything about consular venues, which is the established law. The established law. I.e., that's called treaty. And when someone denied consular venue, they're denying the treaty enforcements. But they know that most of these people are ignorant, so they make those statements, and they've been getting away with it because the people have not been taught civics. Well, we're just telling you the facts of what you should have been told decades ago. As a matter of fact, you should have been given this information in the 3rd grade.
Sean Power said there was an old techie movie where the computer would steal pennies from bank accounts in compounded amounts. Now, do you want to round up?
Isn't that digital? Isn't that digital?
Yeah, we don't have any change from your dollar bills, so we'll keep the 2 cents or 7 cents. Or
you see them even now in the stores saying, "Do you want your change?" What do you mean? How about if you say to them, "Oh, that's $4.98. Do you want me to give you the 98 cents?" They'd look at you cross-eyed, wouldn't they? Tell me how many times you go to these different stores, corporate store venues, and they have a bucket there and they talk about, "Would you like to contribute to the Children's Pimple Fund?" With all these different funds that they've been collecting for children and cancer and everything for decades, where's any of the poverty solved? Do you see more broken families now than you ever did? Do you see any more broken homes and single women trying to struggle to raise children in broken homes with all these funds and all these people caring about the children and collecting all these funds? And then the administrators have plane expenses triple, 6-figure compensation plus other golden parachute venues, and you see the poverty continue. Perfect example. Look what they bombed Haiti to get a gold contract for some political president's brother, and it wasn't granted. So all of a sudden Haiti had a tsunami bomb, a bomb planted in the water near Haiti, and people collected billions upon billions of dollars for the Haitian people to help restore Haiti, and they built about 20 buildings there. As a matter of fact, Jimmy Carter helped do some of them, and the people are still poor, and they were stealing children.
Yeah.
Epstein's Island. Y'all still going for the BS? According to GATT, G-A-T-T, which is the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, you must have a Social Security number. See House Report 103-926. So they're forcing people into the International Monetary Fund, making them think that it is a fund available to them by some insurance policy by which they themselves have been taxed and taxes have been taken from them, and the fact that no fund exists whatsoever. And the politicians that you keep thinking are your government have been robbing it and sending it to or some nation state that was established in 1948. They're all Zionists. I don't know why you all haven't caught on yet. I think people know, but they just don't want to accept the truth. It's hard. However, now they've thrown you off the plantations because the world won't trade with them. I think many of you better start getting serious and getting educating yourself in a lot of these reality facts. And back, one of the things we were talking about earlier, in the car. Number 14, you own, emphasized, no property under the U.S. democracy, period. Slaves cannot own property, period. Read carefully the deed assigned to the property that you have been duped into thinking is yours. You will note that you have been listed as a tenant on that misrepresented document. See Senate Document 43, 73rd Congress, First Session. 15. The most powerful court in the United States of America is not the United States Supreme Court, but the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania. See 42 PA CSA 502. "16. The King of England financially backed both sides of the conflict in the American Revolutionary War. See Treaty of Versailles, July the 16th, 1782. Treaty of Peace, 8, Statute 80. And we've got plenty more for you. These are just simply fundamentals. So you all want to sit up here and argue about the Democratic and Republican Party, both which are Whig-or-more parties split. Two sides of the same coin of anti-constitutionalist and anti-republic order, battling over your estate, and the treasuries against the Moors, i.e. people of African descent, was set forth in 1861 after they murdered Lincoln. It's called the coup d'etat of 1861, March 27th. This is why the Pope of Rome, Pope Francis, informed all of you with a letter written directly to Barack H. Obama and stated about the fraud that took place over 150 years ago, and that the bond system used for the United States to fund the United States Corporation was based on the enslavement of the descendants of Africans falsely tagged as African Americans. Now that's the fact. Now nations want to buy those treasury bonds anymore, and it appears that the United States Corporation is having a problem. Well, how about you all declaring your nationality and killing the rest of those bonds rather than trying to get back on the job? Because remember, the U.S. Corporation Company has been dissolved. I think many of you forgot when Pope Francis had that meeting with the motu proprio, they called so-called religious leaders from around the world and political leaders, and they promised to cease and desist operating the doctrine of discovery, which is what you've been falsely calling racism and prejudice. That's really what you've been suffering from. And now, so you have a rebellion amongst themselves So now the Whiggamore Party is fighting among themselves between the Cotton Whigs and the Conscience Whigs that you're calling the Republican and Democratic Party, pretending that you don't know the history. Pretending that you don't know the history. So they need more stock. So somebody be knocking on your door. Yeah, I want to sign this census and shit. So they can create more stock. However, they've been dissolved. So who do you think you're dealing with? A rogue operation of corporations known as the United States Corporation Company that has been dissolved.
We're seeing the connections with the over the last 10 months. You now see how many things are actually connected.
Of course.
That you thought were individual corporations or individual operations. You thought
given different names.
Entertainment, there was sports,
they're
there was
all
education, there
intertwined.
Was media, there was government. Now you see it's all one big.
They're all connected.
Absolutely.
You know what's really happening? This is another thing that's happening, and you all pay attention to this. The problem that they're having is when the nations of the earth stop buying U.S. Treasury bonds, they could no longer float the bonds. And so you'll see, this is for all of you who think that we're just talking ideas. Look in New York and do a research on how many building booms, that's those big booms that you see building those big buildings. See how many of them have reduced in the last year compared to the year before in San Francisco, in Seattle, in New York, and many of your major cities that have been operating under the Ku Klux Klan Democratic Party, and see how many of them booms have come down because they can't float bonds. And so they're acting like, well, we can't send the children to school and shit. They don't have the funding. And they can't float the bonds. You better start looking at international venues and look at the fact that the trade windows have frozen up. And as I reminded many of you 7 years ago, and re-emphasized about 3 years ago, pay attention to Deutsche Bank in Germany, which is really the CIA's dumping ground for the trade and the derivatives that have been hidden through there by congressmen and senators with their offshore accounts, and all the so-called mortgages of most of the dead pledges that have been operating and bundled at North America are actually housed or controlled under the Deutsche Bank in Germany. Do a little research, y'all. You're being played big time. And you're not poor right now by accident. It's not by accident whatsoever. And you're thinking about voting for these criminals? Keep it up. Have fun with your own estate being liquidated. '22. The Pope of Rome claims to own the entire planet Earth, Midgard, through the laws of conquest and discovery. See Papal Bulls of 1495 and 1493. There we go. So are you all suffering from racism, or are you suffering from the Papal Bulls of the Roman Catholic Church? Because they own Britain. And they own the U.S. corporation that went bankrupt again in 2013.
Oh, Canada.
Well, you know, the things that the people should be discussing, they're not discussing. And the things that they shouldn't be discussing, they're begging, we fought and died for the right to vote against ourselves. Duh. It's really interesting. And again, some of you, and I'll repeat this, is number 13. And for some of you and your parents who've been thrown off the jobs, check your Social Security checks. So your Social Security checks come directly from the International Monetary Fund, which is an agency of the United Nations. And back to what Dr. Naila was saying earlier, they hide a lot of these venues under different names when they're absolutely all connected. So when you see the Social Security operations, it is the IMF. And when you see the IMF, you're looking at the United Nations. So C, Social Security check states, the U.S. Department of Treasury. So you see that the Social Security Administration, the International Monetary Fund, the United Nations, and the U.S. Department of Treasury are all one and the same entity. And you'll find the U.S. Department of Treasury at the top left corner of the Social Security check, which is again a part of the United Nations. That's a fact. But learn how to do some cross references, y'all.
Please, Dr. G, mention November 7th.
Say it again.
Somebody's asked me to mention November 7th, 2020 embassy. Abdullah Mosi Bay location, please. I don't have that information.
Yep.
It's not.
I didn't get it.
They're asking about United Republic, but I don't have that information.
Oh, they're talking about when
For Abdullah, and yeah.
Yes.
Mentioned, but I don't have the details.
Yes, go on the sites and yeah. look at it. You'll see the flyer
on their
they have on their site. Yes.
Yeah, on their site. So.
Yes, on Saturday. Yeah.
Who was it? I'm just trying to see if there's. I'm trying to go back up to questions more so fast.
And again, like it's number 3, and this is in relationship to, the IMF and the United States Treasury and the Department of Treasury, they all being one and the same. The United States has not had a treasury since 1921. And you can see that at Chapter 41, Statute 214, page 654. So, they are actually stealing from the people, sending it to so-called foreign nations aid to foreign nations, which are really where they have in private accounts for themselves. And then they're claiming their own private theft as being the national debt. Number 1, they're not a nation. Number 2, they're a private corporation, and that corporation has been dissolved. So who do you think is forcing you to pay taxes? I don't need to tell you, you start thinking about all these people that you keep talking about voting for.
This is interesting. Let me see if I can find it again.
You better think about governing yourself.
Yeah. Dre Workins says, most Moors never even been to Africa. Shaking my head. That's not true.
You're standing on Africa.
In Africa.
You're standing on Africa.
We're here.
There you go. Northwest Africa.
Right here. Wow. Just trying to see. Someone says U.S.
That's really what they're telling you in The Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
They're really telling you that. You're home already, Dorothy. You've been played. You bumped your head.
Aubrey Cameron says, what do you think about the lie that Second Amendment rights protection is our rights, but law enforcement does not honor any of the law?
Now, aren't we talking about the Organic Act of Congress 18 71 February 2nd, where the Congress set up the U.S. democracy to steal the existing rights of the people. Because remember, Constitution don't give you rights; they secure rights that already exist. The Constitution's existence is just an affirmation of rights that already exist. See, the concept that the Constitution gives people rights is a wrong concept. The Constitution is in place to keep persons who are governing in check. Concept, civics. Just like governments don't have money, governments don't have rights or liberties to sell you or to grant to you. They have an obligation to secure those rights. And when they breach those obligations, they have no right to even talk to you. That's more tell you what you can or cannot have. Our concepts about this whole operations of treaty and constitutions have been incorrect.
Mohez P. March says in England, they made it so that if you do not sign the consensus, I guess that would be the sentence.
Isn't that called arbitrary?
They threaten you with a large fine in the
so
thousands.
Isn't that called arbitrary? Again, they're telling you that they're criminal. Governments are instituted by people, by the governed. How does somebody, a so-called employee, of course that's a fraud, or so-called public servant tell you that you owe them more finance than you even can generate yourself, and if you don't, they're going to F you up? And then you call them your government. Do you see how people have been actually trained that they really don't understand what government is or what government is not? And the more and more you look at things that are going on, you recognize people really do not have a basic, fundamental study in civics that has been actually fostered among the people. The people actually think that government is arbitrary, rather than recognizing that they're organized rogue criminals. And as a matter of fact, whenever some politicians even make a statement like that, issue a quo warranto and show where they derived that authority in the first place, and you won't find it because it doesn't exist. No different than somebody walking up in you're at ATM, somebody walk up on you and says, take out all the fiat and give it to me or I'm going to shoot you. It's exactly the same thing. Tell me where it's different.
So, Darren Logan asks if you can please talk about the Buck Act.
The Buck Act? Oh, where they are taxing everyone. Look up the Buck Act. And this is where they're taxing you unlawfully. And it was mainly directed at our people, basically.
And what did,
yeah.
Where did those who have jobs? Louis Anthony May says, where do those who have jobs get their pay from?
They don't get, see, this is back to the point. Let's Article 1, Section 10. No court shall issue any bills of credit or make anything but gold or silver coin for payment in debt. Have any of you been paid in silver or gold, which is the money? If you haven't, you have not been paid. See House Joint Resolution 192, 73rd Congress in session, June the 5th, 1933, i.e., with the U.S. bankruptcy. Also, the fact that all departments of the U.S. corporation have been dissolved. Now tell by law anyone that you know who's ever been paid. And so the concept that you being paid is a false concept in the first place.
So Master God Squad asks, what papers are needed to set up your own business as a Moor?
Your divine right is called nationalization and the restoration of your estate. This is why we always tell people do a reversion of estate. And this is again why we're talking about self-government. See, the people keep looking to the dissolved operatives of the rogue state corporation called the United States for remedy. They're not the remedy, they're the problem. And then you go and ask them for permission to exercise a right that already exists with you. And then you sign up and give your rights to them to regulate over you. People don't understand what nationalization means. Study carefully what nationalization means. Also study carefully what naturalization means. And also study the word in law called arbitrary.
Jan K. Smith says, is Boricua the nationality for Mexicans? Heard we're Moors too, but I seen that Moor is dark-skinned people. I'm light-skinned, straight, wavy hair. I don't look Moor or Albion. This is confusing.
If you're Mexican, you're still a Moor. If you're Mexican, all you need to do is do research in Mexican history, and they'll tell you, your foreparents will tell you that you're Moors. Olmec is Moors. Old Mexum. That's what Olmec is. You know, when the hybrid conquered the Moors, they even have a song. They call the songs under the Moorines. They call it From the Halls of Montezuma to the Shores of Tripoli. They'll fight their country's battles. Ha! They took over. Get the point? What do you think Montezuma is?
Montezuma.
The Yucatan. Modern Mexico.
Inner City News says, how many Moors do we need to petition a class action lawsuit? I'm not sure about what.
Isn't the fact that you're becoming conscious that's already a plebiscite to the world? See, we are trying to get our people cleaned up in the state of mind of stop asking the occupier for rights, which he will never give, that he has none to give in the first place. You must declare your right. It's called nationalization. The state of mind. See, it's sort of like, this is where the conflict comes when I tell you, Dr. Naila, a lot of people come into these venues looking for remedies, and their conversation, i.e. state of mind, is contradictory. They still thinking like a subject, but trying to act like a sovereign. They talk from a subjected position. It's like somebody asking you, Dr. Naila, where can we make application, sign the application for the right to see what time it is on my watch? That mentality, you see, that mentality is part of what must be cleaned up.
Inner City News also asks, let me go above that. Marvin Mays, why have you all not put this in the USA Today newspaper? Like they would let that be put in.
The question is self-evident.
I know. I just had to read it.
Yeah, but it's good. It's good. But I'm just, because it's something for us to think about. See the state of mind.
Yeah, and maybe not.
And it's not intended to be negative.
But I know it's not. But from a standpoint of USA Today, it would be like
that belongs to
them. So
Zionists.
I'm going to expose you in your
like
own
the Zionists. Look how even that. Look how many, particularly in more recent weeks and months, people who have shared information from around the world, even on the internet, and been shut down. What makes you think they're going to take information against themselves and publish it in their papers that they controlled?
saying?
Why do you think they what? Burned down Tulsa, Oklahoma, which had the wealthiest bank on the land still controlled by Moors? Why do you think the infiltrators into the Moorish Divine and National Movement tore down Noble Drew Ali's printing presses that he has established for the Moors, for the Moorish Monitor and the Moorish Guide? And Drew Ali said, this is our most powerful weapon in the hand of our group, our own press. Do you hear about any of the Moors in the temples talking about Noble Drew Ali's press, the Monitor and the Moorish Guide? And he owned the press and millions of dollars backed by gold for the Moors, and it was stolen. And it's called the Great Sellout that nobody wants to talk about. And then they're talking about, how come the Courier Post don't tell us this stuff? How come the New York Times, Horace Greeley, tell us this stuff? Whiggamore Party? Come on, y'all. Let's stop playing dumb. But these same people keep building churches, mosques, and synagogues, don't they? And going into debt, won't they? But do they set up their own press? But they buy Gucci pocketbooks and stuff. I mean, it's really interesting when you study.
Well, Interesting News says, Tosh, how do we go about getting our own banks, airports, and hospitals and function?
Isn't that why you see the Moors being active, trying against multiple levels of resistance among their own and from the hybrid Europeans of the corporation, United States corporation, bankrupt corporation, keep claiming jurisdiction that they do not have and doing everything they can to block us at every corner, and yet we've been consistent. We've been consistent for years, and how many people you'll hear saying, well, he's saying the same thing he said before. The truth is nothing else to say but the truth.
That's right.
It doesn't come in versions, but you must act on it. It's said over redundantly because you're not acting. You're not responding. Some are, very few. But until the people respond to the truth, it is what? It's abandoned, isn't it? How many people in relationship to things like this are self-government? How many people, how many so-called conscious people, conscious Moors and unconscious Moors, will bring up the dissolution of colonial governments with the as presented to the world with the Special Committee of 24 since 1960? It's not even in their conversation. But yet we bring it up, and you see even some Moors saying, why are they talking about